Hey guys, my name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today we're going to talk to you. He's a filmmaker. He's a director. He's a filmmaker. That's what I'm going to say. I think that's what I'm going to say. Because he's an awesome guy that I've been talking to him almost every day on Clubhouse. A great personality, even though that he's behind the scenes in the camera as directing a movie or a documentary or taking pictures. Whatever it is, we're going to talk about that today. And to see what it takes to be a great or a good filmmaker. And that's you to judge, and you tell me that if he is or not. So Nicholas, how are you? And thank you for coming on Back to Basics.
I'm very well, thank you. That was a wonderful introduction, Girish.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. So we've been friends for the longest time now, and now you're on my show. So thank you again for coming on my show. So before we talk about all the detailed stuff about filmmaking and all the detailed other stuff that I'm going to ask you, and I promise you it won't be that crucial questions. It'll be really laid back questions. I promise you. But what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Simplifying life. I think I live quite a simple life anyway, or I try to. I try to eliminate as many complications as possible. So, yeah, for me, Back to Basics is just getting back to a simpler way of living.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Nick, for coming on the show again and making this brighter for me and my show. So thank you again. So, in your young days, did you always wanted to be a filmmaker, or did this come accidentally to you? That's the first question for you.
Okay, so I definitely didn't consider this as a career when I was younger. I wanted to do a number of things. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to be a pro soccer player. I wanted to be a pro athlete. And I also, strangely enough, at a relatively young age, I wanted to be an accountant. And yeah, filmmaking, photography, that just wasn't something that I considered. My uncle was a photographer, or is a photographer actually. He's still alive. He's still taking pictures. And the truth is that I saw him struggle as a creative. Even though he had some really good clients, I saw him struggle. So for me, that was like, yeah, it looks like fun, but you're not really going to make much money doing it and have a comfortable life. So yeah, I mean, cut a long story short, I played a good level of soccer for a while. After that, I focused on my sort of professional career. I worked in IT and telecommunications after university. And yeah, I hated it. And so one day I literally just decided I'm going to take pictures. And I don't really know where that came from. It was, I was sitting in the office, I got an email, I think it had a pretty picture on the email, and I just decided I'm going to quit my job and take pictures. And so I quit my job and just bought a camera and started to take pictures, started experimenting with filming. And yeah, I guess it kind of just happened like that. I was lucky enough to get a job with a company called Tony and Guy. They're a hairdressing group. And I was working in their training academy, and one of their owners, one of the brothers that owned the company, Anthony Muscolo, he is a photographer and he's an artist and also a hairdresser. And he invited me into the studio. So I worked alongside him. And I met, lots of other photographers, lots of other directors, filmmakers, models, stylists. Everybody that is basically involved on a production came through that studio at some point. I got exposure to magazines, I got exposure to, television producers and so on. And yeah, it just went from there. It was something that I found, not only did I enjoy it, but I found I was good at it as well. So
yeah,
I just kept going with it.
So is it safe to say that you tapped into your skill much later and you figured that out that you are good at it and might as well make this as my living? Have you thought of that?
Yeah, I think I think that's how it happened for me, for sure. I you know, when you're a kid, you don't really know
Of course not.
what life is going to give you and how things are going to turn out. So, I mean, I wanted to try the things that I was passionate about,
Hmm.
and they ultimately led me to this career.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Of,
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick, for that answer. Because sometimes it's quite fascinating when I speak with creators like you and me, that
Mhm.
we always have a background as to why did you end up the way you are today.
Mm,
Because you know what, it could be a journey that it gave them a bulldozer and this is the only way to do it, or they had their own skill and they want to bring their skill up versus some other skill gets overlapped onto what they're doing today. So there are many, many different aspects to that. So thank you for that, because I think you mentioned you were an accountant or you wanted to be an accountant and then you're an engineer. And I think that was not your skill. I think your skill was to look at a different creative eye. And I think that's where your filmmaking came in, and that's where your photography came in, and everything else.
mm.
So yeah, thank you for that. So, so Nick, uh, before we get to other details, is there any movies or pictures that you have done that we can tell the audience that what you have done so far, and then we can look for that?
I mean, most of the films that I've worked on have been kind of in the realm of advertising more so.
Hmm.
I've written a feature which isn't yet in production. That was due to go into production last year, but 2020 was 2020, so and 2021 is 2021. So I mean, it's been delayed, but I have shot sort of films for Bloomberg, the European Investment Bank, Procter and Gamble. They would borderline on commercials rather than films, but they're not, because they're not necessarily selling something. So, for example, they would be telling a story within the context of, let's say it was European Investment Bank,
Mm.
within the context of social development. How a community has risen up, but it's not exactly documentary, and it's not exactly a movie,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
little bit in. But I've done a couple of short films which are maybe still on my Vimeo account, but I'm working on a feature film about mental health.
Oh, nice, nice. Thank you so much for that, Nick. So thank you for explaining that. So here's my next question, and
Mhm.
I hope you can answer this. In olden times, back in the days when I grew up and when you grew up, okay, we were kind of, I wouldn't say brainwashed, but I would say the society actually told us this, is that um, commercial movies are funny movies. Commercial movies are the life over life type of movies,
Mhm.
right? And art movies are considered boring and documentaries, right? But the way the trend is going, I think the commercial and the art is kind of mixing together into one movie. So, what are your thought processes? Because I think there's a different range of um, decades of we have changed a lot, have we?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, filmmaking has gone from just pure entertainment to storytelling, deep, intense storytelling, to really trying to control or manage social narratives. Maybe put certain things that have been expressed in a negative way into something positive. Um, and I think some people have maybe taken it a little bit too far with that,
Yeah.
and I think they're trying to bring that back to a mix of some kind of um, product that has social value but is also entertaining.
Hmm.
And I think that's where we arrive today. I mean, I do think I look at a lot of the new films that come out on platforms like Netflix and stuff like that, where they're producing their original content, and some of it's so heavy, like so serious, and then you get the other extreme, which is the films are just plain ridiculous. But I think, serious filmmakers are now trying to find a balance of, a bit of entertainment, but a bit of social value as well. And I think that's where you get the really, really sort of compelling stories being told and the really, really great movies being made.
So you think nowadays, I think we are living in a better life that we're getting good content? Because the reason why I'm saying that, because even old movies or older movies, they do have good content. Are we...
Yeah.
So how do you explain... Does that make sense what I'm asking here?
No, it does. I mean, okay, so a lot of the older films I prefer. Yeah, a lot of the older films. But they were purely for entertainment. Yeah, they weren't necessarily they weren't necessarily challenging you to rethink how you see the world or how you interact with people. They were just good movies, and a lot of them were good fun. Some of them were like, frightfully scary, and you had some which were just plain terrible.
Right.
Today, I think there's a lot more content being produced. There's a lot more films being made. They have, significantly bigger budgets to spend on these films, and maybe they don't spend it in the best way.
Yeah.
Maybe the saturation of content kind of dilutes the quality a little bit. Again, that sort of comes down to money and the resources that are available. And when I say resources, I mean things like the availability of CGI and being able to, create these kind of otherworldly type scenarios. Maybe more effort goes into the production rather than the story.
Yeah.
And so we get some, fantastic looking films that don't really have any real depth. But then, I say that, even though when I think back, like some of the films that I loved from when I was growing up, maybe they didn't have an awful lot of depth.
Right.
They were, overall, they were really entertaining. So, and I would watch it from beginning to end and not be bored. And I could watch them again now and still feel the excitement or the joy that I felt then.
That's right.
Whereas a lot of the films I watch now, in all fairness, are quite forgettable.
Yeah, that's a shame too, actually, at the same time. But there's certain movies which I have realized, and I've not seen the new ones. What I'm gonna explain here right now. There's one which is Joker, and there's one which is a Sopranos, which is a TV series on HBO, right?
Yeah.
So the new version of Sopranos is dissecting how Sopranos became Sopranos. So I think we're coming to a stage, and the reason why I gave that example, and even Joker, because we know Joker from Batman, right?
Yeah.
But now I think we're coming to a point that who the hell is Joker? So they dissected that character. So my question now is, with these two examples, and these are just two examples, there might be other examples too, but do you think that we're coming to a stage that we want to understand the storyline as to how they became what they became?
Does that make sense? Double-edged sword, that one. It does make sense. I mean, in part, I do want to understand how the characters became who they were, but at the same time, I'm happy to take their part in that original film as just their part in that film. It kind of maybe doesn't matter to me so much. Like, I mean, let's say we look at the Joker, for example, like the Joker in Batman. Jack Nicholson, when he played the Joker, I mean, that part for me worked. He worked as a character. He worked in that film really well.
Yes.
And it was just interesting. I didn't need to know too much about his history or anything else. I got enough of a glimpse to understand a bit of his past, where he came from, and this is what happened to him, and now he's the Joker.
Right.
And, fair enough. I'm happy with that.
Right.
To take it a level deeper, it's going to entertain some people, and some people will like that. I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary. But, I can see that people would appreciate that. I mean, it's the same with the Star Wars movies.
That's right.
The Solo, and there was another one which I can't remember what she was. Good films, good. Yeah, they're good films to watch. Did it really matter? you know, like I kind of know the outcome of what happened with Han Solo. I know the outcome of what happened to the rebels when they tried to get the shield. That, you know the outcome. So even though that film was good to watch, it didn't really change anything for me because, you know, you knew that they all died anyway. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
you know, I might be getting a little bash when I say the Star Wars stuff, but me personally, I like the Star Wars that I grew up with. Me personally, just me only, and back to basic only, is that I didn't really care for the prequels of the Star Wars, but I resonate with the after of what I grew up with. Because, okay, so now what happens when everything happens? Does that make sense? So I kind of enjoyed when Han Solo died. And I enjoyed that whole storyline because that whole storyline kind of made sense to me. So I think so I think the main question, I think it's more of different generation to different generation. I think the new generation, they like the prequels, they like the after, they like a whole dissecting of the story. And I guess we're still in the the old realm that we still like that part of the story. I don't know how to explain it, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's like a book, isn't it?
It is
a book, and that book is fixed in time. It's fixed in a period of time, and you get immersed into that story, and there is no other story.
That's right.
You know, like no other story matters. It's only that one that you read. And I think when we try to, you know, create the prequel, create the you know, what came after and all of this, yeah, they're great. You know, they're great to watch. But did we need them?
Right.
Did we need them? You know, because I think with the prequel for, you know, like the 3 Star Wars films in the beginning. I mean, you know, you could have wrapped that up in one film to just say, look, Anakin, he grew up and he became Darth Vader, and this is kind of what happened in between. Could have wrapped that up in one film.
That's right.
Didn't really need to know about the Clone Wars or any of that stuff.
Right.
Not you know, not so much in detail. It could have been condensed a lot more and just be made into one amazing film. You know, Darth Vader is a really interesting character, for example. So it would be interesting to
understand,
to kind of know a bit more about him. He had a lot of mystery around him. But like, you know, if it was maybe any other character, maybe they're not that interesting. So, you know, and I'm not just talking about Star Wars, but in any other
no. There could be anything else. I mean, it could be even let's say Lord of the Rings, or it could be the Pirates of the Caribbean, or it could be the other prequels, which is The Hobbit. Any of those you know, movies. We're not just bashing just one movie here, but they're different examples, and I just want everyone to understand that. So Nick, we know the difference between a movie and a TV series, which is on the OTT platforms that we have, the Netflixes and the Amazons and Hulu nowadays. They're having great content, right? So has then been, this is your personal question now, do you think that there's certain movies should be a show, or a show could have been a movie? If you had two that you had to pick, which one would you pick?
Wow, that's a good question. I might have to come back to that one, actually.
Okay. Yeah, think about that and let me know, I guess. It's a tough question, because there has been certain shows that I want, you know what, I didn't really care for the show, and I like that to be a movie instead of me wasting my 8 hours or 10 hours, depending on the episode, you know, whatever. But that has been the percentage was really small, because do you agree that we should have a certain, do you prefer shows or do you prefer movies? Let's put it this way.
See, that's a tough question as well. Like I think I prefer movies. I think I prefer movies because just because of what a movie represents to me. You know, it's a moment in time, and I think, you know, if I want to sit down and watch this thing, for example, I want to watch it then. Yeah, I don't want to watch it, you know,
much later, right?
yeah, like a little slice here, a slice there, a slice some other time. Then maybe I'm traveling or whatever, and then I come back to it, and I can't really remember what happened in the last couple of episodes, and so it's all a little bit disjointed.
Yeah.
So so for me personally, like I've very rarely, apart from last year, I've very rarely had the time to just sit and watch a block of a series.
Okay.
As I think off the top of my head, I'm thinking what I watched last year. I think I think I watched the entire series of Stranger Things, and I thought that was really good. I could have seen that as a movie instead of like 4 series.
Right.
I could have seen that as 1, maybe 2 movies, because that would have been enough. Because a lot of it was, a lot of the series, as much as they are good, they tend to repeat a lot of the scenarios, and so you get it gets a bit formulaic in a sense, and so you're seeing the same kind of stuff, maybe slightly different characters in a slightly different setting, but it's similar stuff.
But with that example, this is just one example. Breaking Bad, we have 5 seasons of Breaking Bad, and that became a movie on Netflix, and no one liked the movie. And that movie, so it's a hit and miss sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think okay, so maybe I misunderstood the question. I think if I could choose to have something as a series or have it as a film instead, and it has never been a series, then yes, I think Stranger Things, I would have, as much as I enjoyed watching it, because I literally had nothing else to do.
That's right.
I would have been quite happy to have that as just one film.
I think I agree with that too. I think, but I think
I think the other thing as well, like just what you mentioned just before about Breaking Bad. I mean, if you consider the Marvel films, for example, really, really, really successful films, but then the spin-offs, the independent, the series that they've now got running, are they any good really? They kind of fill in some gaps, but
they fill in the gaps.
They're not anywhere near as good as the films.
Right.
And I think you had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was on Netflix.
Right.
And that was not that great, not that believable. I'm not saying the Avengers was necessarily believable, but you could relate to.
I understand. But I think the reason why they had that show, and I think my son explained it to me, that there are certain parts which were missing in the movie, and they explained that into a TV series.
Yeah.
So these youngsters that are explaining this to me, that this is what happened. So there might be some reasons and signs to it. Is it needed, not needed? That's really debatable, and that's everyone's prerogative when it comes to these things. So yeah, thank you so much for Nick for that. So I have 3 questions for you, and there were 3 quotes from film directors, different film directors. I'm not going to name any of them, but I'm just going to give you the quote that they mentioned. When I see these sentences, what is your reaction to that? Okay. So the first one is, when people ask me if I went to film school and I tell them no, I went to films. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means that it was in them already, they didn't need to study sort of the technicalities of making a film. They wanted to see how films were made and how stories were told. So
yeah.
I think I agree with that in the sense, because I'm self-taught. I didn't go to school, study anything. So
yeah. The second, no problem. And the second one is, the most honest form of filmmaking is to make a film for yourself. Yeah, I agree with that as well, because it's authentic, then, isn't it? It's actually you're not making stuff up, and you're not trying to kind of piece something together outside of your sphere of experience. I think if you make a film that's based around things that you have felt or have gone through or know or are connected to, then that's definitely me. And the reason why I read that is because there could be certain producers, they say that you have a certain budget or you have a certain way that you want to do it, and then ruins your storyline. So does that mean that it's authentic for the product or the budget or the director? Does that make sense?
Sorry, repeat that.
So, for example, let's say I'm a producer of your movie, right? And I say that, you know what, instead of going through this street and go to this street because I didn't get my licenses for the street or whatever. I don't know how it works, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Does that storyline changes a little?
It might. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you've got when you've got a vision in mind, you want to execute that vision. I think if you're trying to tell a story and the story involves certain elements, then you need those elements. Otherwise, it's a different story, isn't it?
So that does that considered as your movie, or does that considered as the budget of the movie? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the producer's movie. That's the budget.
Yeah. Okay. And the third question here is: all good ideas start out as bad ideas. Is that true or false? And does it go a long way if it is a good idea and a bad idea?
I don't know if I'd say bad idea. I think all good ideas start off as like seemingly unrealistic ideas.
Okay.
Which could be deemed bad, I guess, in a way, because you just don't know how it's even going to come together. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say bad. I'd say unrealistic. Unrealistic.
Okay. Yeah. So, thank you again for coming on my show, for making this brighter for me, and it's great because I've talked to you almost every day on Clubhouse, and we understand each other now. I hope.
Yeah.
So, do you have any last words before you leave today from Back to Basics?
I mean, I think what you're doing is great in terms of Back to Basics being a way in which people should, be seeking to live their lives. I think that's really important. I think, in my industry, like I do work predominantly in fashion and advertising. I do a lot of my work there. I think that, that's an industry that could really benefit from some back to basics thinking and methods, because it's just, some things are just way overcomplicated for what in the end what we're producing some visual content. Like, it shouldn't be hard to do that.
Yeah,
I could do that with just me and a very small group of people. So yeah, I think we can all benefit from simplifying our lives and industries a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you again, Nick, for coming on the show again, and thanks for answering all the questions. And I hope it was not tough on you, but thank you again for coming on the show.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, we spoke with Nick today, and we talked about filmmaking. We talked about the transition that we have gone through in many decades, and how the content has kind of changed in a good way or a bad way. That's you to judge. But that's just our point of views, no one else's point of views, okay? So there's no right and wrong answers. Now, obviously, youngsters will think a little differently about prequels and all that, and what we think is prequel doesn't make sense. Why not just move forward? Or just make that as a movie? There are many different answers and many different point of views. So please comment as much as you can on that show. So now here's a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and I hope Nick's like the quote that I have here. The quote is, "We don't make movies to make money. We make money to make more movies." That's by Walt Disney, and I think that's kind of true in a way. So why don't we just make movies that makes you feel good, and have money come to you to make more movies? How about that? I think that's my end take of this episode today. So guys, as always, as usual, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and comment all my episodes that I've done so far. Good, bad, ugly, either way, it'll make my show stronger day by day, week by week. And you know what? The year is still there, and we are still going strong. Back to Basics is not going anywhere. We are definitely preparing for season 2, so stay tuned on that. And just remember, just live life and stay happy and stay blessed. See you next week. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
you might need to inculcate just to be a part of the space.
Yeah.
Because that if you do not have that, then it becomes very difficult for you to be a part of that space or people to acknowledge you over there. So these are things that you need to actually think thoroughly before you even go within that industry. So if you want to be in the army, you don't have a choice, right? You cannot be the original you if you're crazy, if you really like to do fun things. Just imagine just running off in your boxers one morning and just shouting at the top of your voice. In an army, you'd get rusticated.